I found the truth in a laundry basket, staring me in the face like a crime scene. That night I stopped being her husband, and became her reckoning. 23 years. That's how long I stood by her side. And this is how she repays me? With betrayal so low it makes my stomach churn. I guess I always knew something wasn't quite right with our marriage, like a dripping faucet you keep ignoring until one day your whole basement's underwater. But with Rachel the leak wasn't water. It was thick, white, and clung to her clothes like a slap across the face. She had just gotten back from a business trip, 3 days in Chicago, supposedly. And now I'm here in the middle of the night, staring at the laundry basket like it's a crime scene exhibit. Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. Our quiet suburban kitchen, humming with that eerie kind of stillness only betrayal can bring. I had picked up one of Rachel's silk blouses, something I hadn't seen her wear in years and certainly not for me. I held it up to the kitchen light. There it was. The stain caught the overhead light and glowed like a warning flare. Like some cruel joke written in invisible ink, until it wasn't. My God, I whispered under my breath as I let the blouse fall back into the basket like it burned me. In all our years together, I'd never seen anything like that on Rachel's clothes. We barely touched anymore, hadn't for months. Maybe longer. Definitely not enough for her blouse to end up marked with that. Name's Jack Reynolds. I'm 44, mechanical engineer at Brightridge Systems. Not a genius if you asked Rachel, but not dumb either. I know what dried up mess that was. I build machines for a living. I noticed the little things. And that stain? That was no accident. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every creak of the floor above me sounded like it was calling out the truth, like the walls themselves were ashamed of what they'd seen. Rachel was upstairs, probably asleep already. Jet-lagged, she'd said, and totally drained from the back-to-back meetings. Sure. And our daughter, Lily? She's off at college, thankfully. At least she wouldn't have to watch this mess unravel in real time. I pulled open the fridge and grabbed a beer, hands still trembling, not from rage, at least not yet, but from that sinking feeling in your gut when everything you thought was solid starts to crack. I sat at the kitchen table, beer in hand, and just stared at that laundry basket. Like it might suddenly confess everything. 23 years. You don't throw that away over a stain. Or maybe you do. My phone buzzed on the table. Text from my friend Mike. How was the reunion? Rachel bring back anything good from Chicago? Yeah, she brought back a whole new kind of hell. I stared at the message, thumbs hovering over the screen before I typed back. Same old stuff. We'll catch up later. But deep down I already knew. I wasn't going to be catching up with anyone tomorrow. Not with the kind of storm that was about to hit. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not until I had the full picture of what was really going on. The next morning, Rachel came gliding down the stairs like nothing in the world had changed. Like the woman I married hadn't just walked back into our home with someone else's mark on her clothes. And let me tell you, she looked incredible. Radiant even. Her auburn hair was styled just the way she used to wear it when she still cared about date nights. Not a strand out of place. Her makeup was done with surgical precision, not a trace of the exhaustion she'd claimed the night before. She wore a sharp navy blue suit that probably cost more than my car's last repair bill. Good morning, babe, she said, cheerful but not too much. But she didn't quite meet my eyes. Coffee ready? She added, glancing over at the machine. Just finished brewing? I nodded and handed her a mug, keeping my eyes on her like a hawk. I was hoping, praying, for even the slightest flicker of guilt. A twitch. A blush. Anything. But no. Rachel Reynolds, senior partner at a prestigious law firm, had a poker face made for courtrooms and confessionals alike. She could probably pass a lie detector while reading off a list of sins. How was the conference? I asked, forcing my voice to sound neutral, light. Oh, the usual, she replied casually, blowing on her coffee. Endless panels, horrible hotel food, and people who love the sound of their own voices. She took a sip and glanced down at her phone, thumbs tapping away like nothing was wrong. I've got a big client meeting this morning, she said quickly. Running a little behind. Which client? I asked sharper than I meant to. She looked up. Her green eyes met mine, calculating, alert. For a second I thought I saw the gears turning behind them. The Preston Group, she said smoothly. Why? I shrugged. Just interested. We don't really talk about work anymore. Her expression softened just a little. Like she hadn't expected that response. You're right, she said with a small sigh. We've been a bit off lately. Let's fix that. How about dinner this weekend? Just us. Somewhere nice. Guilt. That's what it was. I could see it now. She was trying to bury something with steak and wine. Sure, I replied, offering a faint smile. I'd like that. She leaned in and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, dry, robotic. The kind of kiss you give a stranger who did you a favor. Then she grabbed her bag, walked out the door, and got into her sleek black BMW like she had the whole day ahead of her, and no idea her life was about to implode. I stood by the window and watched her drive off. The moment her car disappeared from view, I bolted upstairs. I'm not proud of what came next. But sometimes when you're drowning in doubt, you claw for anything that might keep you afloat. I tore through our bedroom like a man possessed. Dresser drawers, her closet, inside coat pockets, under the bed, even her jewelry box. Nothing. Rachel was too smart to leave anything obvious behind. But nobody's perfect. I found her laptop tucked into her work bag. Of course it was password protected. But I knew Rachel. She wasn't the type to use random strings or complex combinations. She believed in sentimentality. She used to say it was what made her grounded. So I tried our wedding date, 06151999. The screen lit up and unlocked. And in that instant I felt like I'd just opened a trapdoor straight into hell. Her email inbox looked spotless. Too spotless. Like someone had gone through and scrubbed every trace of real life from it. But the browser history? That told a different story. That's where I found it. A link buried between legal research and hotel bookings, a site I'd never heard of before, discreetmeet.com. The tagline hit me like a punch to the gut, for professionals seeking sophisticated companionship. My hands started to tremble again as I clicked through, a growing sense of dread wrapping tighter around my chest. And there she was. Her profile popped up before the page even finished loading. It was definitely Rachel. Same polished headshot she used on her firm's website. Smile warm, posture poised, hair just right. But the wedding ring? Cropped out like it never existed. Her username, Sophisticated Lady 38. The bio felt like it was written by someone I didn't know at all. Successful attorney seeking intelligent conversation and passionate encounters. Discretion essential. No strings attached. I stared at the screen, my stomach folding in on itself. This wasn't some one-time thing. This was deliberate. Maintained. Built over time. I started scrolling through her messages. There were dozens of them. All kinds of men. Businessmen, professors, divorced dads, young tech guys. All lining up to meet the sophisticated lady. Compliments, innuendos, weekend plans. Some were flirty, some explicit. But one thread stood out from the rest. It was way longer than the others. His name was Doc Marcus. Real name, Dr. Marcus Williams according to his profile. 42. Divorced. Emergency room physician at New England Medical Center. African American. Clean-cut, confident. The kind of guy you'd trust instantly. Probably the kind of guy who walks into a room and makes people lean in when he talks. Their messages went back half a year. 6 months. 6 months of late-night chats, swapped fantasies, weekends away on business, and hotel bookings. I could barely keep reading. The language. The intimacy. The way they joked. The way she told him things she hadn't said to me in years. The most recent messages were from just last week. The day before she came back from Chicago. Doc Marcus, can't wait to see you again in Boston. Booked us the presidential suite at the Marriott. Hope you're bringing that little surprise we talked about. Sophisticated Lady 38, I'll bring something special to wear, or maybe not to wear, winking face. I sat back in my chair, staring blankly at the screen. This wasn't just cheating. This was a whole double life. The walls felt like they were closing in. I couldn't breathe. I didn't remember grabbing my keys. But suddenly I was outside, driving with no idea where I was headed. I just needed to move. To get away from the house, the lies, the image of that message burned into my brain. I ended up at Jared's place. He opened the door, took one look at me and said nothing. Just stepped aside and let me in. That's the kind of friend he's always been. A few minutes later we were in his garage where he keeps his old boxing setup. I'd hit that heavy bag plenty of times before. Work stress, life frustrations, but never like this. Talk to me, he said, wrapping tape around my knuckles, handing me the gloves. And I did. I told him everything. About the blouse. The stain. The dating profile. The 6 months of lies typed out like a novel on her laptop. He didn't interrupt once. Just stood there letting it all pour out. When I finally stopped, he asked the question I hadn't let myself think about. So what are you going to do? I shook my head. I didn't have an answer. I don't know, I said quietly. I really don't. Part of me wanted to burn it all to the ground. The lies. The whole past 2 decades. But I knew better. That was the rage talking. And rage, Man, it's a dangerous thing. It turns good men into fools. Jared stood by, holding the heavy bag as I worked through a mix of jabs and hooks, sweat dripping, breath short. You want revenge? He said calmly. You gotta be smart about it. Emotion makes you sloppy. You need to be sharp. His words echoed in my head long after I left. Later that night I kept digging. I don't know what I was looking for, maybe just more pain to prove I wasn't crazy. Maybe some thread of truth that would help this all make sense. I started revisiting old digital backups, things I hadn't touched in years. And what I found didn't just hurt, it shattered something in me. There were names I recognized. Men from our circle. One of them had been my old boss back at the engineering firm. Another used to coach Lily's soccer team. Each connection followed the same grim rhythm, flirting that escalated into affairs, then eventually tapered off as Rachel moved on to her next target. But what gutted me most wasn't just the pattern, it was the souvenirs she kept. Hidden deep inside her hard drive, buried in a folder labeled insurance, protected with layers of encryption, were the videos. Dozens of them. Footage of her with these men. Intimate. Shameless. Shot from angles that told me they didn't even know they were being recorded. Hidden cameras, maybe set up in hotel rooms or apartments. Watching those clips, only for seconds I couldn't stomach more, I realized it wasn't just betrayal. This was manipulation. Control. A weaponized form of seduction. She wasn't just cheating. She was collecting leverage. A few days later I followed her. It was a Thursday. She told me she had a long meeting at the office. But her car was parked outside New England Medical Center, where Dr. Marcus Williams worked. She was inside for 3 hours. I waited, camera ready, nerves raw. And when she walked out, she wasn't alone. Marcus was with her, walking close, his hands sliding across her lower back like he owned her. They stood near her car for a moment, then kissed, slow, familiar, full of the kind of heat that had disappeared from our home years ago. It wasn't some cheap fling. She looked happy, comfortable. I snapped several photos through my phone's zoom lens. Each click of the shutter felt like a hammer to the chest. I told myself it was for documentation, for when I finally decided what came next. But deep down I think I just needed to see it, to stop pretending. That night, Rachel came home with a bouquet of sunflowers and takeout from our favorite Thai spot. The same place we used to go on anniversaries. Surprise, she said with a soft kiss on my cheek, like nothing was burning down around us. I've been thinking, she added carefully. You've been distant lately, and I know something's going on. If you're going through something, maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist, or maybe even a lawyer. I met her gaze steady. No. I'll handle it my way. 3 days later, everything shifted again. Mike, my old college buddy and now a lab tech, called with the results from the sample I'd brought him. I told him it was part of a personal investigation, and he didn't ask many questions. Just ran the test and promised honesty. Jack, he said, his voice tight over the phone. You're going to want to sit down for this. I was already parked outside his lab, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Just tell me, I said. He hesitated, then delivered the blow. There are multiple DNA profiles in the sample you gave me. Yours is in the sample, obviously, Mike said, his voice low, careful. But there are at least 2 other distinct profiles. Both male. One appears to be Caucasian, the other African American. I didn't say anything for a while. Just stared through the windshield at nothing. I'd suspected. I'd known on some level. But seeing it confirmed in black and white, scientifically undeniable, it still hit me like a brick to the chest. But I wasn't ready to blow it all up just yet. Not until I knew everything. Over the next 7 days I became someone else entirely. Cold, focused, obsessed. I burned through my remaining vacation days at work, called in sick, told Rachel I was helping Jared with a home renovation project. Whatever it took to stay in the shadows. I tracked her every move. I followed her car, took notes, logged times and locations. I'd installed a small GPS tracker under her rear bumper and kept her phone mirrored on an old iPad she'd forgotten was still linked to her account. And what I found went beyond anything I'd imagined. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was busy. Monday afternoon she met with a police detective, Detective Ray Barnes, at a downtown hotel. Lunch turned into 2 hours behind closed doors in a suite at the Hilton. Wednesday evening she visited someone I recognized from a charity event we attended last year. A college professor married with 2 kids from the university down the road. I watched as she slipped into his house just after 8 p.m., didn't leave until nearly midnight. Every lie she fed me I documented. Screenshots, timestamps, photos, receipts. She'd become a master at weaving her stories, late at work, client dinner, bar association mixer. And she told them so effortlessly, so sincerely. On Friday night we had dinner together at home, quiet, intimate. Just the two of us. She lit candles, poured wine, asked about my week like she genuinely cared. "I feel like we've turned a corner," she said, smiling, taking my hand across the table. "I know things haven't been easy, but I'm happy. I really am." She said it with such certainty, with so much emotion in her eyes, that for a second, I almost believed her. Almost let myself fall into that illusion. But then I remembered the photos on my phone. The GPS logs. The DNA results tucked inside the drawer in my home office. "Good," I said softly, wrapping my hand over hers. "I'm happy too." But inside I was already gone. That night, after Rachel drifted off to sleep next to me, I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wide awake. Enough was enough. Surveillance was over. It was time to confront the truth face to face. One by one. I started with the detective, Ray Barnes. I caught him outside his gym the next evening, leaned against his truck as he came out with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked up and froze when he saw me. "Jack, right?" he said cautiously. "You've made me a participant in your affair," I told him, voice calm, even. Unwilling, unknowing, but complicit just the same. He winced. "Look, man, I held up a hand. "I'm not here to fight you." He squinted, guarded. "Then what do you want?" "I want you to stop seeing her." He didn't hesitate. "Done. I mean it. It wasn't serious." I gave a hollow laugh, one that felt like glass cracking inside my chest. "I know exactly what it was," I said. "I've got the messages, the pictures, the Hilton Hotel receipts." He paled. I pulled out my phone and brought up a photo I'd taken earlier in the week. Him and Rachel walking out of the hotel, her hair messy, his hand low on her back. The image said more than words ever could. "I also have your wife's contact information," I added. "She teaches second grade at Pine Hill Elementary, right?" He swallowed hard. "And your captain's number. I got that too. Along with all your credit card charges for hotel stays that don't match your work schedule." Ray stared at me, silent, cornered, ashamed. I tucked the phone away. "I'm not out to ruin you, Ray. But you're going to stay away from her. Understood?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I got it." One down. I documented everything. Every text. Every email. Every hotel receipt, dinner reservation, and whispered exchange. I had an entire digital folder, labeled innocently as tax docs, filled with timestamped screenshots, GPS logs, surveillance photos, and enough dirt to bury every man she'd tangled up in her web. And now I was using it. I met the college professor, Dr. Henry Cartwright, on neutral ground. A quiet bench near the university's botanical gardens. I'd asked to talk, no drama, just a conversation. He brought a coffee, expecting something professional. Instead, I handed him a plain manila folder. He opened it with shaking fingers. With every turn of the page, printouts of private messages, images of him and Rachel embracing on his front porch, logs of hotel stays charged to his university card. His complexion drained another shade of white. How did you get all this?" he stammered. "Does it really matter?" I asked calmly. "What does matter is what I choose to do with it." He looked up at me, suddenly anxious. "What do you want?" I leaned in slightly. "Same thing I wanted from Detective Barnes. For you to disappear from my wife's life." His eyes widened. "Barnes? You mean, there are others?" I almost pitied him in that moment. Almost. "Professor," I said quietly, "you're one of 5. Did you really think she picked you because you were special?" He blinked hard, stunned into silence. I stood up. "Be smarter than the rest," I said, and walked away. Next came the toughest one politically, Councilman Thomas Vance. A man who built his entire reputation on the foundation of family values. Sunday morning speeches about loyalty, tradition, and the dangers of moral decline. He spoke like someone who feared God and adored his wife. I knew his dirty little secret would be a death sentence to his image. I didn't confront him directly, not at first. I arranged to bump into him at one of those high-end charity banquets downtown. One of those rubber chicken dinners where the city's elites came to toast each other's egos. He was working the room, shaking hands, posing for photos, delivering his usual brand of carefully curated charm. I intercepted him between tables, smiled, and slipped him a sealed envelope. "Read this alone," I whispered. "You'll know what to do." He opened it later that night, based on the panicked voicemail he left me around midnight. "Jack, He said breathless, "We need to talk. Please. This can't get out. Was a mistake. I have a family." I didn't call him back. He'd gotten the message. But the one that cut deepest? That was Frank Rodriguez. He wasn't just my boss at Brightridge Systems. He'd been my mentor. A second father after mine passed away 10 years ago. Frank had shown up at the funeral. Held my shoulder when I couldn't keep it together. Helped me get back on my feet when I felt like I couldn't breathe. He vouched for me at work. Fought for my promotions. Invited me to his lake house, introduced me to his kids. I looked up to him. And he'd been sleeping with Rachel for 6 months. That betrayal wasn't just infidelity, it was something colder, something cruel. It felt like being gutted with a handshake. I found him in the break room late one evening. Everyone else had gone home. He looked up from his coffee, gave me a warm smile. "Jack," he said, "burning the midnight oil again?" I didn't respond. Just set my phone down on the table and hit play. A short clip. Just enough. Frank's face collapsed as the audio filled the room. His voice, laughing, saying Rachel's name. The timestamp visible on screen. Undeniable. He sat down slowly. "That depends on you," I said, staring him down. "Are you going to end it?" He nodded instantly, desperate. "Yes, absolutely. It never should have happened. I don't even know what I was thinking." I leaned forward, quiet but firm. "If I find out you're lying, if I even suspect that you're still in contact with her." "You won't," he said quickly. "I swear, Jack. I'll request a transfer. I'll go to a different department. You have my word." I picked up my phone, slid it back into my pocket. "One more lie, Frank, and you lose more than just my respect." I walked out before he could respond. 3 down. 2 to go. "Whatever it takes," I said, rising from the table. But just before walking away, I turned back and looked Frank in the eyes one last time. "You were like a father to me," I said, my voice tight. "That's what makes this betrayal unforgivable." He didn't say a word. Just sat there, his sandwich untouched, staring down at the table like it could somehow rewrite the past. That was 4. Only one remained, Dr. Marcus Williams. But Marcus wasn't the type I could scare off with guilt or confrontation. He was too smooth, too practiced, and clearly too proud of what he thought was his secret life. So I took a different approach. I called New England Medical Center's administrative office. "I need to report some troubling behavior by one of your emergency room physicians," I told the woman who answered. Her tone shifted immediately. "What sort of behavior are we talking about, sir?" "Dr. Marcus Williams has been engaging in a highly inappropriate relationship with one of his patients," I said plainly. "A married woman. I have proof. Documentation." There was a pause on the line, then, "These are very serious accusations. Do you have evidence?" "I do," I replied. "Photos, messages, credit card statements. He's been meeting with this patient, Rachel Reynolds, off hospital grounds in private locations for several months." Another pause. Then, "Can you come in this afternoon to speak with our ethics committee?" "I'll be there," I said and hung up. With all of them neutralized, at least for now, I figured Rachel would start to pull back. Maybe even show signs of guilt. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd finally have that confrontation. That moment where she told the truth. But instead, she pivoted. The next morning over breakfast, she poured herself a cup of coffee and looked at me like nothing had changed. "I've been thinking," she said with a smile, "maybe we should take a vacation. Just us. Get away from the noise. Reconnect." I set my mug down carefully. "That sounds great. What did you have in mind?" "Something warm. Tropical. The Caribbean maybe. Just for a week or 2. We could leave as early as next week." I almost laughed right in her face. She wasn't reconnecting. She was trying to remove me from the board. Get me out of the picture long enough for her tangled web to recover. She probably thought the heat had cooled down. That the men she thought I'd never find might resurface once I was on a beach with no cell service. She had no idea I'd already dismantled the whole operation. But just when I thought I'd uncovered it all, I learned there was still more. One evening, my phone lit up with a campus number. I didn't recognize it at first until it hit me. Emma. My daughter. She'd been struggling in one of her statistics courses. I picked up and immediately asked for the professor. When he answered, I didn't waste time. "Dr. Hayes. We had an understanding." He sounded confused. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm not sure what you mean." "My daughter," I said, letting the words sit like stones in my mouth. "Emma Reynolds. She's in your stats class." "I teach hundreds of students, sir." "Cut the crap," I snapped. "You offered her private tutoring. One-on-one sessions. Off campus. Just the two of you. What exactly were you planning? He fumbled. I can assure you there's nothing inappropriate. She's simply been struggling with the material. She's 19, Professor, I said, voice cold. 19. And you're pushing for private sessions without supervision. Don't play dumb. I meant nothing by it, he stammered. It was academic. That's all. Let's hope so, I said, my tone steel. Because if I find out there's anything else going on, you'll wish you'd never heard our last name. If you so much as look at her the wrong way, I said, leaning forward, voice low and steady, I'll make sure you never step foot in another classroom again. Dr. Hayes tried to maintain his composure, but the fear was setting in. His eyes darted toward the hallway like maybe someone would walk in and rescue him from this. You think you're playing games with me, I said. But this isn't a game. I sat across from his desk, close enough to see the panic bubbling under the surface. The realization that he'd crossed a line he didn't even fully understand. You didn't approach my daughter to help her, I continued. You approached her because you thought it would hurt me. Maybe you thought it would give you leverage. Maybe it was retaliation. Or maybe, I said, narrowing my eyes, maybe you just wanted to cause pain because misery loves company. He swallowed hard. I never intended. Here's what's going to happen, I interrupted. You're going to resign. From this university. Today. Immediately. He blinked in disbelief. That's ridiculous. I have tenure. No, I said firmly, you had tenure. Past tense. I slid an envelope across his desk. Inside were printouts, screenshots of their messages, photos of him watching her walk across campus, even the message where he offered to meet her off-site, to go over the tough stuff in private. No parent in their right mind would see that and think it was innocent. His hands shook as he opened the folder. You do this quietly, I said, or I go public. And trust me, the court of public opinion doesn't care how many academic articles you've published. I left him there, pale and sweating. Then I made my final call. Captain Rodriguez? I said when the line picked up. Speaking. This is Jack Reynolds. I need to report misconduct by one of your detectives, Ray Barnes. There was a short pause. What kind of misconduct? He's been having an affair with my wife. And when I confronted him, he used his badge, his authority, to threaten me. Tried to push me into silence. Captain Rodriguez didn't flinch. She sounded like the kind of woman who'd seen more in a month than most see in a lifetime. No nonsense. Direct. Mid-50s probably. The kind of cop whose patience ended with excuses. Can you provide details? She asked, already pulling up a file I imagined. I have photos. Time-stamped. Receipts. Messages between them. He used police resources to track me down after I confronted her. I believe that violates internal conduct policy. Meet me at the station this afternoon, she said. Bring everything. That was it. All of them, neutralized, exposed, broken under the weight of their own decisions. And yet Rachel, she still didn't break. The next morning, over coffee, she said it like she was planning a picnic. Jack, I've been thinking, she said, reaching for my hand across the table. Maybe we should take a vacation. Just the two of us. Get away from all this. Reconnect. I almost choked on my coffee. That sounds nice, I said, keeping my tone flat. Any place in mind? Somewhere tropical. Caribbean maybe. I could book something for next week. I smiled faintly, almost pitying her. She was trying to move the pieces again. Trying to isolate me, take me out of the city while she rearranged her mess behind my back. But this time the board was already flipped over. That night I confronted her. We were in the living room. She was sorting through some work papers and I walked in, calm, composed. My phone in hand. Rachel, I said. Can I ask you something? She looked up. Sure, what's going on? Do you ever get tired? I asked. Of all the lies? She frowned. What are you talking about? I stepped closer. The lies you've been feeding me for months. About your late nights. Your business trips. Who you've been with. Where you've been. She stood up quickly, papers falling to the floor. Jack, I seriously don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I said, unlocking my phone. Let me jog your memory. I swiped to the first photo. Rachel and Marcus walking into a hotel lobby, his hand on her back. She went white. This was Tuesday, I said, when you told me you were at a client dinner. Swiped again, Detective Barnes leaving the Hilton, adjusting his tie. Last Thursday. You said you were working late. Again, Professor Cartwright, smiling at her on his porch. Saturday. Said you were visiting your sister. Photo after photo. Every lie unraveling with each swipe. She reached for the phone and I pulled it away. I destroyed them all, I said. Every man you used. I gave them what they gave me. Her lip trembled. Jack, please. Please what? I asked coldly. Please forgive you? Pretend none of this ever happened? Go back to being the faithful husband while you sleep with half the damn city? She didn't answer. Couldn't. I walked to the window and looked out at our quiet suburban street. White picket fences. Neighbors mowing lawns. Porch lights flickering on. The life I thought was real. The life that was nothing more than a well-lit illusion. 23 years, Rachel. My voice cracked as I said it. Not from weakness but from the weight of it all, 2 decades of shared life collapsing under one simple truth. 23 years I've stood by you. Loved you. Supported you. Stayed faithful when it wasn't easy. And this is how you repay me. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at the floor, hands trembling in her lap. Then finally her voice, barely more than a whisper. I'll change, Jack. I promise. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, Rachel. You don't understand. The man you married? The one who believed in you, trusted you, would have done anything to protect you, that man's gone. I looked her square in the eye. You killed him. There was a long silence between us. The kind that stretches endlessly in the space where love used to live. I turned toward the door but stopped in the doorway. One last message. And Rachel, if you ever reach out to any of those men again, if you even think about causing trouble for me or Emma, those videos go public. Every single one. Think hard before doing something stupid. She didn't move. Just sat there in the wreckage of what used to be our bedroom, surrounded by the ghosts of her decisions. Later that day I called Emma. She didn't pick up, so I left a message. I told her I loved her. That I was sorry for the chaos, and that no matter what happened between her mother and me, she'd always be my little girl. She didn't call back. When I tried again later, she answered, but only to tell me not to contact her anymore. That she needed space. That she was staying with her mom for now. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling like I'd just been kicked in the ribs. Rachel hadn't just betrayed me, she'd poisoned the one thing I thought was untouchable. But I wasn't done fighting. That same afternoon, I got in the car and drove the 2 hours to Emma's campus. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I just needed her to see my face. I found her in the student union, tucked in a back corner, staring blankly at a cold cup of coffee. She looked up as I approached. Her eyes were swollen, red from crying. Emma. She shook her head. I told you not to call me. I know, I said gently. This isn't a phone call. And we need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Maybe not, I said, sitting down across from her. But I do. She folded her arms, guarded. Wounded. You don't have to forgive me. You don't even have to take my side. But I need you to understand one thing. No matter what happens between me and your mom, you're still my daughter. And I still love you. More than anything in this world. For a moment she didn't move. Didn't even blink. Then the tears came again. I love you too, Dad, she said softly. But I can't. I can't deal with all of this right now. I nodded. That's okay. Take all the time you need. I left her there, sitting alone in that booth, knowing it might be months, maybe years, before she reached out again. But at least now she knew the truth. At least I'd said what needed saying. The next few weeks passed like a bad dream. Papers filed. Lawyers called. Mediation, division, signatures. The formal death certificate of a marriage. The day the divorce was finalized, I came home to find one of Rachel's old silk blouses still tucked in the back of the closet. I didn't even hesitate. Took it outside and tossed it on the fire pit, along with every wedding photo I could find. Watched it all turn to ash under a pale, indifferent sky. I thought that was the end of it. But life doesn't always work like that. 3 months later, I was having dinner at Murphy's Pub, the same place I'd confronted Detective Barnes, and in walked someone I never expected to see again. Dr. Marcus Williams. But he didn't look like the polished charmer from the hotel photos. No, he looked wrecked. Clothes wrinkled, shirt untucked, hair a mess. The guy had clearly lost weight. Deep shadows under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. He saw me across the room. Paused. Then walked over slowly. When he reached my table, he looked down at me and said quietly, "It's true, isn't it? And the baby's his? Marcus Williams?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. I just needed to hear her say it. Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. Something deep inside me cracked. Something I didn't even know was still intact. How long? I asked, voice hollow. She didn't flinch. We never stopped seeing each other, Jack. Even after you tried to ruin him, we kept going. But his job, his license. He's appealing the decision, she said almost defensively. And even if he doesn't get it back, we'll figure it out. We love each other. That word, love, landed like poison on my tongue. Does Emma know? I asked, already anticipating the answer. Not yet, she replied. I'm planning to tell her this weekend. She'll come around. She's mature. She said it like it was no big deal. Like the storm she'd caused could somehow end in a neat little family portrait. Rachel thought Marcus had won. That by putting a child in her, he'd planted some kind of victory flag. But he had no idea what real revenge looked like. Over the following week, I tracked Marcus's new life. He'd gone from a respected ER physician to a pharmaceutical sales rep. Less pay, less prestige, still clinging to some illusion of stability. He was living in a modest apartment downtown, driving a dented Honda Civic instead of his old black BMW. I learned that his ex-wife had finally cut ties after the affair went public. His medical license? Still suspended, likely never to be restored. Then I found something better. Insurance fraud. Marcus had listed medical procedures on his taxes that were never performed. I called the state insurance commission. Yes, I'd like to report a case of ongoing insurance fraud. It took 2 months, but when the dust settled, Marcus Williams was formally charged. Felony counts. Massive fines. And any remaining hope of reinstatement? Gone. But the masterpiece, my final move, came later. Rachel was 6 months pregnant. I'd been watching the apartment, taking photos, documenting the comings and goings. She still didn't realize how many cards I held, how deeply I'd laced the board in my favor. I confronted her again. You've hurt me, Rachel, I said. But now you're going to hurt too. She tried to play the sympathy card. Tears, trembling hands, that wounded look she'd used so many times before. Please, Jack. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. You should have thought about that before you decided to carry another man's child. This isn't about me anymore, she said. It's about the baby. You're right, I replied. It is about a child. A child who'll grow up knowing his father is a convicted criminal, and his mother was sleeping with half the city while still married. She broke into sobs. How can you be so cruel? 23 years, Rachel. And you threw it away. Later I tried to talk to Emma again. Told her the full truth. She listened, then sighed. This is a lot to process. My mom's pregnant with her lover's baby. My dad has destroyed 5 lives for revenge. My whole family's insane. She didn't cry this time. Just said, I have finals, Dad. I have to go. She hung up. I sat there in the silence of our empty house. Rachel gone, Marcus on trial, Emma drifting, and I felt nothing. No triumph. No closure. No guilt. Just emptiness. Maybe that's what revenge really is. Not justice, not balance, just a hollow space where love used to live. I visited Marcus one last time. He was in county lockup, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his eyes sunken, shoulders hunched. I want you to remember this conversation, I told him. Every hardship you face from here on out is the direct result of your choices. You don't get to blame anyone else. He didn't say a word. I left him there with the weight of it all pressing down on his back. 6 weeks later, Rachel gave birth to a baby boy. She named him Daniel. Whether it was out of spite or some sick nostalgia, I'll never know. She sent me a photo through Emma, a tiny, wrinkled face, eyes closed. Pure. Innocent. Unaware of the chaos that preceded him. And I stared at that photo with a cold, detached mind. The world thought my war was over. That I'd exacted enough. But I knew better. The real pain hadn't started yet. I met up with Jared the next day. Sat across from him in the garage while he wrapped my hands like old times. So what now? He asked. You've burned the house down. What's left? I looked at him, my voice low and steady. I want him to lose everything he has left. And then I want him to lose everything he might ever have. Jared paused. That's a tall order, brother. I know, I said, a bitter smile playing across my lips. But I also know you're the right man for the job. And what about Rachel? The baby? What about them? I said. They're not innocent. Not anymore. The baby may be young, but he's Marcus Williams' son. That makes him part of this. Jesus, Jack. I'm going to make sure he understands, I said, that some sins never get washed away. Some wounds never heal. And some enemies? They never forget. The war wasn't over. It was just changing shape. And this time there would be no survivors.